The notification came while I was rinsing out a coffee cup. I dried my hands, glanced at my phone, and there it was. Ethan standing in front of a Christmas tree so tall it barely fit in the frame. Kara clung to his arm like she always did in photos, and her parents were on either side, beaming like they'd just won the lottery. Aspen, snow, lights, expensive coats. The caption stopped me cold. So lucky to spend the holidays with my real family. I didn't drop the phone. I didn't scream. I just stared at the screen until my thumb went numb. My glasses slid down my nose, but I didn't push them back up. My heart didn't break. Not yet. It just stalled like it needed more time to believe what it was reading. Yesterday, I wired him $200 for that very trip. Flights were getting expensive, he said. Kara's family is covering the lodge. I just need help getting there. He said thank you. He said it twice. I believed him. I sat down at the table, still holding the mug, and typed without thinking. Then let them pay for your trip. No flourish. No exclamation marks. Just the truth. 10 minutes later, the post was gone. Vanished. Scrubbed like I never saw it. But I had. And I'd already saved the screenshot. I didn't call him. I didn't need to hear the excuses. I just sat there while the lights blinked on the little plastic tree in the corner of the room, blinking like nothing had changed. But everything had. That single sentence didn't just cut me out, it replaced me. I was no longer a mother. I was a transaction. A funding source with a last name. I reached for my old notebook, the one I kept in the kitchen drawer for grocery lists and check reminders, and flipped to the first clean page. I started writing down numbers. Not out of spite. Not yet. Just so I wouldn't forget what I'd given. It didn't start with the Aspen post. That was just the final public cut. The quiet unraveling had been happening for a while, small, silent tears in the fabric, missed calls that turned into unread messages, replies that dwindled to K or busy RN. I told myself he was stressed planning the wedding, working long hours. But even on holidays, the silence grew louder. Last Thanksgiving, I made enough food for 3. I set the table anyway. The candles melted halfway down before I finally wrapped the leftovers and turned off the porch light. He never called. Sent a text the next morning. Sorry, crazy day yesterday. No apology. No explanation. I responded with a thumbs up and pretended that was enough. But before the distance, there was always a need. I remembered wiring him rent money during grad school twice in one semester when his stipend came late. I drove across the state when his old truck broke down in the middle of nowhere. I sat in his new apartment until 2 a.m, helping him build bookshelves he never learned to level. He hugged me then, said I made everything easier. I never expected repayment. I never asked for anything back, but I thought naively that the giving meant I had a place, that I mattered. I could feel it changing last spring. He started declining visits. Kara's family has something that weekend. We're doing brunch with her folks. I began to notice how many times I was the one initiating. The messages always started from me, and sometimes they never got a reply, but I didn't stop giving. I told myself it was generosity. Truthfully, it was fear. Fear that if I stopped giving, I'd disappear completely. Now I knew I already had. I flipped to the next page in the notebook and wrote down the Aspen transfer. Then I opened the laptop and pulled up the old spreadsheet I used for Ethan's wedding planning. The wedding budget was still saved under the name E&C, 2025 Planning. I hadn't opened the file in months. It felt like touching something fragile that used to be mine but had been left behind. Each line glowed with memory: $750, venue deposit $1, $200, photography retainer $410, catering tasting $2,000, apartment furnishings, sofa plus dining set. That sofa I still remembered helping them choose it. White, too soft for real life, but Kara insisted it photographed beautifully. Ethan stood there beside her in the store, nodding without conviction. I paid for it while they debated throw pillows. No one offered to split the bill. Scrolling down, I saw the total, $11,640, all from me, quietly, without ceremony, because they said they were saving, because they said they'd pay me back eventually. I opened my Venmo history, not looking for anything in particular, just checking. That's when I saw it: refund, Mom's fund, minus $3,000 from Ethan sent to Kara, dated 2 weeks before Aspen. I hadn't requested a refund, and I'd certainly never received one. I clicked into the payment details. No note, no context. Just a quiet movement of money out of a shared account I no longer had access to. Something knotted in my chest, not pain, not yet. Just a tightening, a shift. I pulled out the insurance file folder, the one I kept under the sink. I flipped through recent statements, cross-checking procedures I hadn't needed. There it was. A dental surgery billed in September. Not mine, not even in my city. But I remembered the brunch where Kara's mother bragged about her new implant and how fast the insurance cleared. I hadn't thought much of it then. Now I thought everything of it. I circled the line item in red ink and added a note. Signature, not mine. I closed the folder, opened my phone, and typed in one name I hadn't used in years. Mia Castor. Mia answered on the second ring. Her voice hadn't changed, still calm, measured with that edge of curiosity she never quite lost, even after moving into estate law full-time. Dorothy, she asked, confused. It's Celia, I corrected softly. I stopped going by Dorothy after I left the firm. She paused. Celia Maddox. It's been a long time. I didn't waste her time with pleasantries. I need help. Quiet, clean, and quick. Another pause. She knew better than to ask why. Tell me what you're looking for. I took a breath. This isn't revenge, I said. It's containment. Within an hour, she'd sent over a secure portal. I uploaded everything: PDFs, screenshots, bank records, insurance claims, and that Venmo transfer that still made my stomach turn. She promised a full review by morning. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my old briefcase open, sorting through files I hadn't touched in years. The trust documents were still intact, the language generous, almost naive. I'd written them when Ethan was just finishing graduate school before Kara. Before any of this. I gave him discretionary access planned to let him manage things freely after I passed. I'd wanted him to feel trusted. I thought I was giving him stability. Now, I saw it differently. Mia called back just after 8 the next morning. We need to restructure everything, she said. The way it's written now, Kara could claim shared marital benefit. If they marry, she might be entitled to everything you've contributed. I didn't reply. I was staring out the window at the backyard Ethan used to run through barefoot. Back when he told me I was the smartest woman he knew. Mia's voice was low. I don't like how often her name appears on things you paid for. Neither did I. I asked her to begin drafting an emergency amendment to the trust. One with firewalls. One that remembered what I had forgotten. By evening, she sent over a preliminary outline. The first sentence was already underlined in red. Mia sent the email with no preamble, no comment. Just the subject line. For your eyes only. I opened it on my laptop expecting a receipt, or maybe another flagged transfer. Instead, it was a forward, clean corporate, clipped in tone. From Richard Callahan to board partner subject, Ethan Maddox. Onboarding confirmation. Looking forward to bringing Ethan into the fold. Once paperwork finalizes, we'll initiate the clean break. No loose ends, no mother-in-law drama. I read it again, and then again. No mother-in-law drama. It wasn't just a drift. It wasn't just Ethan being overwhelmed or newly engaged. It was design. I was a loose end, something to be tied off, snipped out, neutralized for ease of image. I didn't cry. That part of me had emptied weeks ago. What was left now wasn't grief. It was something quieter, heavier, more precise. I opened the notebook and turned to a fresh page. 1. Reclaim the wedding fund. Any money not used for its stated purpose would be frozen, reviewed, and potentially recovered. 2. Remove discretionary access from all accounts. No more blank checks. No more blurred lines. 3. Confront Ethan. Not with rage, not with tears. With facts. Let him sit across from me and explain how I became the complication in the life I built for him. I stared at the list until my pen slipped from my fingers. For a long moment, I just sat there in the kitchen, my breath shallow, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. It's a strange thing to grieve someone still walking around with your name on their birth certificate, but I wasn't going to be erased quietly. If they wanted to bury me under the image of some polished new life, they'd have to do it without my help. The next morning, I pulled out a jar of pasta sauce and bought fresh garlic bread. Ethan always liked that meal. I didn't tell him why I was inviting him. I just told him dinner would be ready by 6. Ethan arrived 5 minutes late with a bottle of wine and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Smells good," he said, glancing toward the kitchen. "Haven't had your garlic bread in forever." He kissed my cheek like nothing had changed, like we were still the people we used to be. I nodded and motioned for him to sit. I'd kept things simple: pasta sauce from the jar bread warmed in the oven. No candles, no wine poured, just plates, forks, and everything I hadn't said yet. We made it halfway through the meal before I opened the folder. "I've been going through the wedding account," I said, gently sliding a few pages across the table. "There are charges I didn't approve and transactions I didn't know about." His smile thinned. "Mom. The lodge in Aspen, the spa retreat. A payment labeled gear rental that matches Kara's ski photos. That's $400 miscategorized as wedding expenses." He set down his fork. "You're seriously doing this now?" I kept my tone even. "Yes." He laughed tight and humorless. "You're acting like I committed fraud." I looked at him. "You filed an insurance claim in my name for Kara's mother's surgery. You used my address on a mortgage application. You transferred money I gave in trust to someone else." He crossed his arms. Plans changed. Things shifted. Kara's parents stepped in and helped with other parts, So you used my money for luxuries while telling me you were stretched thin," I said. "That's not a plan. That's a lie." He didn't speak. I folded the last page and looked him in the eye. "You say I'm turning this into a court case?" He nodded slowly. I slid the folder back into place. "No, Ethan. You already did." We finished dinner in silence. He helped clear the plates, barely speaking, his movements slower now. He didn't ask to take leftovers. He didn't ask about Christmas. And when he left, I didn't walk him to the door. The next morning, Mia called with her voice clipped and flat. We found more. By Thursday, everything was ready. Mia moved fast, she always had. We met twice that week to finalize every clause, every timeline. The wedding fund was formally frozen. All discretionary access revoked. Every future withdrawal would require itemized documentation and my signature. We built in contingencies. We wrote the firewall from scratch. She reviewed the trust again, line by line. Kara's name appeared 3 times in the original version, small, almost harmless notes. One as a witness, one as a suggested secondary contact, and once buried in a clause about joint beneficiaries in the event of formal union. We struck every mention. By afternoon, Mia sent the formal notice to Kara's parents. The subject line was neutral, summary of findings. Discretionary trust account. She CC'd their legal counsel. Inside were receipts, screenshots, and 2 pages of legal context. No accusations, just facts. I didn't write anything personal. No notes. No explanations. Just the numbers standing alone. That evening, I printed one more document and clipped it to a manila folder. Across the top, voluntary restitution agreement. It listed every misused dollar totaling $9,400 and outlined a 6-month repayment plan. It included no interest, no penalties, no threats, just math. I stared at the folder for a long time before sliding it into my drawer. This wasn't about winning. I didn't want their world to fall apart. I just wanted out of the illusion. I had been funding their life like it was a silent sponsorship deal, quiet wiring, invisible hands. Kara got to be the gracious fiancé, Ethan, the self-made man, and me. Just the name behind the payment method. Not anymore. The next morning, I drafted a short message and sent it to Ethan and Kara. Please join me for a brief review of the wedding fund and updated trust documentation. My attorney will be present. Kara replied 8 minutes later. Of course. Thanks for keeping us in the loop. I didn't respond. I opened the blinds in my kitchen, poured myself a cup of tea, and waited for the day they'd walk in, thinking this was routine. They arrived 5 minutes early. Ethan wore the same navy jacket he used to bring home from college, cleaned up now, with newer shoes and careful hair. Kara had on a cream coat and a smile that looked rehearsed. She greeted Mia like a hostess arriving at her own party. Ethan kissed my cheek light, as air like nothing was wrong. We sat around a polished oak table. Mia started with a soft welcome, then flipped open a folder. Today's agenda includes a review of financial disclosures, examination of account transfers, and proposed amendments to the trust. Kara blinked, confused. Sorry, what do you mean disclosures? Mia didn't hesitate. We'll be walking through all recorded transactions tied to the wedding fund, specifically those flagged for misclassification or misuse. I didn't say a word. She began with the statements, every spa charge rental overpriced dinner, labeled as vendor coordination. Each was printed, highlighted, and placed in front of them. Then came the Venmo transfer refund from Mom's wedding gift fund, minus $3,000. Kara shifted in her seat. Ethan said nothing. Then came the insurance documents. Mia placed a copy of the false claim on the table, pointing to the signature block. Filed under Ms. Maddox's name, for a procedure in a city she hasn't visited in over a year. Kara's jaw tightened. This feels blown out of proportion. No, I said, finally speaking. You were trying to write me out quietly. But you forgot who I am. Mia slid the final document across the table. Effective immediately, she said, Daniel Maddox is removed from discretionary access to all trust accounts. All permissions are suspended, pending further review. Kara opened her mouth, but Mia raised her hand. The wedding fund is frozen. Any future use will require line item approval, and a portion is now under recovery. Ethan looked at me, searching for softness maybe. He found none. They left quietly, coats a little heavier than when they'd arrived. 3 days later, Mia called with an update. Her voice was calm, but the words landed like stone. They pulled the job offer, and the wedding's off for now. The snow started falling again the night Ethan knocked on my door. No coat. Just a sweater and something heavy in his eyes. He didn't speak right away. He held out a photo, wrinkled at the edges, printed not digital. It was us years ago on his high school graduation day. I was holding his diploma. He was smiling like the future had just cracked open. I messed up, he said. I stepped aside without answering. He walked in like the place felt unfamiliar now, like he wasn't sure he was allowed. I made dinner. Nothing fancy, leftover stew bread from the freezer. He didn't talk much. Neither did I. No mention of Kara. No attempt to explain. When the plates were cleared and rinsed, I reached for the folder on the counter. I slid it across the table. He looked at the label. Voluntary restitution agreement. He opened it. Read every page. $9,400. Each item accounted for. The spa, the lodge, the transfers. Clean numbers, no emotion. I waited. He nodded, once picked up the pen and signed. No protest, no excuses. just a quiet acceptance that what had been broken would not be fixed with words. He capped the pen and looked up at me. Do you think she ever really loved me, or just the access I didn't answer? He already knew. Before he left, I handed him the photo. Not as comfort, more as record. A reminder of a boy who once looked at me with pride. Maybe someday he'd remember how that felt. He stepped back out into the snow, and I didn't watch him go. I stayed in the kitchen, hands resting on the table, the silence full, but not empty. Later that night, I climbed into the attic to find the old ornament box, the one with his handwriting still on the lid. The attic was colder than I remembered, but the box was right where I left it, tucked behind old linens and a chair we never repaired. The lid still had his handwriting uneven but proud, Xmas. Do not touch. I brought it down to the living room and sat cross-legged on the rug, folding back the flaps one by one. The scent of old paper and time rose up like dust. Inside, tangled lights chipped figurines, a crumpled angel that used to sit on top of the tree. And buried beneath it all, I found it. A lopsided ornament, barely holding together. Cardboard red ribbon looped through the top, glitter rubbed mostly off. In thick black marker, the words, "To Mom, love always." He was 7 when he made it. I remembered him hanging it front and center, arms stretched high, declaring that everyone who came over should see who I love most. I held it in my hands for a long time. The ribbon was frayed. The bottom edge bent inward, but the words hadn't faded. Let's see if that's still true, I whispered. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just let the quiet sit with me. Grief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a slow loosening of breath you don't realize you've been holding until it slips out. I packed the rest of the ornaments carefully, setting that little heart aside on the table. I didn't know if it belonged on the tree yet, but I hadn't thrown it away. That was something. By the time I washed the attic dust from my hands, the house felt different. Not softer, but steadier. Like something had shifted, not back, not forward, just finally upright. I made tea and left the folder on the counter. Ethan was supposed to come by tomorrow to drop off the first payment. No promises, no performances. Just a slow rebuild done the only way it could be now, quiet, steady, real. And maybe someday I'll hang that little cardboard heart again, but not yet.